I am Katya Osakin. I'm the program manager at the Climate Challenge Network, and I'm here today with our team. Ian Jarvis is our executive director, and our technical team on this project are Mark Mahdi and Behnaz Yazdirad. I'll do a bit of an overview for a couple of slides, and then I'll hand it off to Ian for the rest of the presentation today. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to ask them in the Q&A option, and our team will do our best to respond as Ian goes along. We also have a dedicated Q&A time period towards the end. Um, just to mention, this webinar is being recorded, and we will be publicly posting it after the live session. So today we're sharing the results of our national research project that we've been conducting across 5 provinces in Canada. Project is called Foundations for Net Zero Buildings. We really appreciate the support of Natural Resources Canada under their Codes Acceleration Fund. So that's the funding for this project. Our team will be making recommendations about the development process for new schools on a national basis. And we're collecting those recommendations into an energy efficient new school development guide. About 2 weeks ago, we had an advisory meeting for this project that was to collect the input for this guide. We really appreciate everybody's thoughts and comments during that meeting and after that. So what we're presenting today incorporates as much of that feedback as possible. Something that we sincerely care about and wanted to include here, the land acknowledgement of the unceded territory of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people. I am speaking from the traditional lands of the Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and the Mississaugas of the Credit River. We sincerely hope that this work and all our work contributes to our common responsibility as stewards of this shared environment. Moving on to next slide, and just briefly about us, the Climate Challenge Network is a nonprofit organization. We're working across North America, and we focus on greenhouse gas emissions that are associated with large buildings in commercial and institutional sectors. As we all know, many of these buildings are high energy users. They're working towards decarbonization, but there's a lot of work to be done to improve the operating performance in the meanwhile. So we're looking across different sectors, healthcare, municipal schools, and post-secondary, and we're getting all those building owners together, collaborating, moving these things forward. So that is the mandate of Climate Challenge Network and really the basis and the background for us conducting this research work. For this particular project, we have been looking at 4 different building types: hospitals, K-12 schools, commercial office buildings, and municipal community centers. And the goal was to collect real operating data of buildings open since 2015. We have been digging pretty deep into the ones that are doing the best relative to the others, the ones that are at the top of energy efficiency benchmark charts that we're going to show shortly. And we're looking also at what went differently, what happened with the ones that are further down the charts that seem to be less energy efficient than others. And this is really that foundation of the guidance document that we'll prepare and that we hope that will be used by school boards and governments across the country, everyone involved in the development of new schools, so that going forward, every new school can be as efficient, energy efficient as it can be. So that would be based on the top performers that we have discovered through this work that we're also going to talk about a bit later. So schools was our first of the 4 building types that is going through this process, and the other building sectors will follow over the next months. I will turn this over to Ian now and turn to next slide.
Yeah, thank you, Katya, and good Morning to everyone joining us from the West, and good afternoon for everybody in Ontario and East. We've got all five provinces that this project applied to, plus Quebec represented on this call today. So really happy with the turnout, happy to have you here. As Katia mentioned, the Q&A attached to this, which everybody will see, is the place for you to record your comments and your questions. We've got a lot of very experienced people on this call, and we welcome your input, and we will absolutely reflect that and incorporate what we learned today into the guide that will be the end product of this work. Katia will pick up at the end on when you can expect to see that and what the next steps are. But please use the Q&A, not the chat. The Q&A becomes part of the record. We will respond to questions over the course of the event. Katia will make the call on some that we might incorporate into the conversation today, and we can unmute people and let them ask the questions. But this is intended to be interactive. We need to hear from you. We need your views, your thoughts on the reasonableness, the practicality of everything we're going to talk about today. So you can see from here there are five provinces that were covered with the work that we did. 67 school boards we were delighted were good enough to step up and provide data. And many of you have spoken with us. We've had interviews, we've had conversations, we've dug deeper into some of the findings, which I'll share with you in just a second. But we're very comfortable with the degree of representation we had across the five provinces to put these recommendations together. Next slide, please, Kathy. And this is the centerpiece of the findings so far. So this is really the story to this point. As mentioned here, we've got 234 schools that submitted annual electricity and thermal energy data. And in the chart you see in the middle, every horizontal line is a school. They're all new schools. They were all opened since 2015. So we characterize them as new schools built generally to current codes. The the key aspects here are the red dotted line. And again, the blue is electricity use per square foot. The orange is the thermal energy use per square foot. You can see all the variability, but the median of all of these, and we did a fairly simple approach to weather normalizing all of the buildings to Toronto so that we have a reasonable level of apples to apples. And the red dotted line in the middle there, that's the median. That is, over the past 10 years, a state of our current practice. Collectively, this is what we're delivering in terms of new schools. The green dotted line to the left of that is what we're proposing today is an appropriate energy target. And we'll talk about the school archetype attached to this. But as mentioned in the notes on the right-hand side, the majority of these schools are still heated with boilers, gas-fired boilers primarily, but fossil fuel heating. There are a few that are geothermal or heat pump systems, but the majority of these are traditional school systems with current level of technology. What is, I think, essential, because we asked this question of everybody we spoke to, the schools at the top of this chart, there's no discernible capital cost premium paid for these. The high performance that they've achieved has not resulted in higher capital costs. We are recommending higher upfront costs in terms of modeling and commissioning beyond what is currently done to achieve these numbers. But the net present value of these schools, and we took these numbers, the median and the target, for a range of schools from 50,000 square feet to 200,000 square feet, and you can see it's simply prorated. The lifetime value of the energy difference, just the utility cost difference using Ontario rates, is between $1.5 and $7 million over the lifetime. And we will argue the case with everybody that that's a good, investing a few $100,000 in doing a better job up front is well worth those kind of returns over the life cycle. For interest, the greenish blue dotted line on the right side, that is current National Energy Code Tier 1 for the school archetype that we chose. The dotted dark line on the far left-hand side is Tier 4. And so there's some significant conclusions are drawn from this. But this is the range. Everything is normalized in this case to Toronto, but can be normalized to any other location. These findings we consider profound in terms of the current state of play of how we're planning, designing, building, commissioning, operating new schools today. Next slide, please. So we spoke to the boards that were that had schools at the top of that chart, and we spoke to a number of boards that had schools far further down, and we reached 6 conclusions here about some of the big things that we heard of when schools don't turn out to be as efficient as they could be, they should be, the National Energy Code wants them to be. What goes wrong? So you can read this quicker than I can speak it, but standardization is a big deal. The the engagement of the people who are going to be running the facility at the outset, so that they're part of the design, they bring their experience to the table, is critical. One of the biggest gaps we see is, and we don't mean to be pejorative here, but inadequate scope and oversight of commissioning. It just it's not a perfunctory thing. It's the bridge between design intent and performance, and we find enormous scope for doing that better. We find across the country limited metering and limited access to data coming off the metering. We found procurement issues that were getting in the way, and the operational part, along with commissioning, along with a high performance energy target training, staffing limits, the ability of staff to manage new technology is fundamentally important. So these, for your reference, are the kind of things that we heard. I'm sure everybody on this call has their own stories, but these are some of the things that go wrong. Everybody sets up to build a new school with the best of intentions. What we've shown you is the large majority turn out to be not as energy efficient as they could and should be. Next slide, please. So for your consideration and for your feedback today and for the ongoing discussions we'll have with a number of you going forward, this is what we're concluding and recommending from everything that we've learned over the past 18 months that we've been working on this. The good news is we know how to plan, design, build, and operate highly efficient new schools that are already, the best of them are running close to NECP Tier 4. We heard clearly in an advisory group meeting that Tier 4 is not necessarily considered attainable these days. We think it is. So we have school boards that are already getting pretty darn close to that area, and they're still looking to improve. And this is still based on conventional systems, fossil fueled fired boilers, furnaces, conventional heating cooling systems. And the difference between these is a big deal. When we looked at those numbers for a single school, back on the opening slide, there are dozens of new schools opening across the country. Population is growing, the number of schools is growing. If we can get this right, which we think everybody can, the potential for utility and emissions reductions is very significant. We find that excessive energy use in the schools is not based on they cost less. It's based on failure at different stages in the development process, and we'll share with you our thoughts about what that closed loop development process is for a new school in a moment and where we're seeing the failure points arise. And the intent, very simply, of this guide is to pull all of this together in a place that can be referenced by every school board, every government, every utility company across the country. And again, we really look forward to getting your feedback, but we believe adopting the recommendations in this can lead to every single new school being built in Canada meeting these high performance standards from here on in. So you'll hear the recommendations, getting involved with schools that are in the pipeline, taking corrective action with the new schools which are underperforming because they have most of the technology they need. It's a matter of primarily of recommissioning and operations. Metering is such a big deal, and you'll hear that over and over again through this piece. With good metering supports modeling, it supports commissioning, and it supports ongoing operations. And governments and utility companies and school board management have a big role to play in terms of setting the right policies, the policy framework, the rules, the regulations that consistently support high performance outcomes. So this is where we got to so far. This is what we're proposing. This is what we're recommending. And for the rest of today, we're going to dig deeper into all of the individual issues at play here. Any comments that we should include that we haven't been able to respond to so far, Katya?
Not yet.
Okay. So let's dive in and we'll tell you how lucky we were with this particular study. And luck has a lot to do with it. Next slide, please. So, Steve, I don't know if you're on the call today, but Steve Allen is the manager of Energy and Environment with the Halton Catholic District School Board. It's a small to mid-size school board that you can see the geographic location there. They have 48 elementary schools. They have 10 secondary schools. They're a high population growth area. They're opening about one school every year. And Halton Catholic has been consistently at the top board-wide for all of its schools of our annual rankings of the most energy efficient school boards in Ontario. So Halton Catholic, we say we consider ourselves fortunate that we found four of Steve's schools, that he was generous with his time to help us dig into and understand better what their how they came about, what are the factors involved, and Steve's work is the foundation of the recommendations within this report. We have actual existing operational new schools running now at the kind of levels we're talking about. And we believe that by replicating the practices that Steve has tested and proven over time, that we can all deliver these kinds of outcomes. Next slide, please. So these are the four schools. They're not all operating identically. They all have some differences between them. Two of them have daycares. As mentioned at the beginning, these are all fossil fuel fired boilers are the predominant heating source within each one of those. There are no air source or other heat pump type sources that are in use at this point. You can see the locations there in Southern Ontario, and these are typical elementary schools. They're kind of typical size, typical use of elementary schools. Next slide, please. And these are the numbers that came out of them that we've been working on. So in the 2023-2024 school year, the total EUI you see there in the orange for the four schools range between 7.5 and 9.6 equivalent kilowatt hours per square foot per year. And one of the more controversial issues we've had to this point is what those units should be, whether it's gigajoules per square meter or equivalent kilowatt hours per square meter, or if you're American, kBTU per square foot. So we got all of these to piece. The numbers that at this point we're most comfortable with are equivalent kilowatt hours per square foot. It's a nice range and they're understandable. But you'll see later what we were recommending as a high performance standard. Three of these four schools had electrically heated and cooled portable classrooms, but they were sub-metered, so we could extract those from the piece. And you can see the breakdown. Note in particular, because we'll come back to this later, the range of kilowatt hours per square foot for lighting from St. Gregory and St. Nicholas at 1.0, and there's reasons for that and recommendations from that. But you see the rest of the breakdown with respect to gas. The most efficient schools are using 4 equivalent kilowatt hours per square foot per year, the majority of which is for space and ventilation air heating. So these are the numbers that we're working with. Next slide, please. And with Steve and with a number of other boards across the country, this is typical of my colleague, as Katia mentioned, my colleague Mark and my colleague Benaz are on this call. They've been having calls with school boards across the country, digging a little deeper into selected schools as to what are the characteristics. And these are the inquiries that we made of. These are the questions that we asked. And on the right-hand side, there is a simple summary of the kind of systems they have in the building. So this is the background to the numbers we looked at a moment. Again, nothing unusual, fairly typical systems that we would have seen over the past 20 years. Current technology, good technology. Holton Catholic focuses on efficient technology, but these are the schools we're looking at that relate to the numbers we looked at a moment ago. Next slide, please.
Ian, just a quick question from
Yes.
Benjamin at Appeal School Board. Can we here explain a bit more about what systems are being submetered?
We will come to that in just a moment. We have the breakdown of submetering that both is in use by Holton Catholic and we're recommending for other boards. But great question, yeah. That's one of our 9 steps in the process. Next slide, please. We make a lot of use of interval metering, and that's going to come back over and over again. And you'll see one of our recommendations is every new school should have interval metering, whether it's through the utility company or whether it's just attaching a pulse head to the meter and reading it through the building automation system. But the easiest way to commission and verify a high-performing new school is through interval metering on both electricity and natural gas, and fuel, oil, and propane where natural gas is not available. This is very simply a picture that verifies the actual operating periods. The board's standard hours for school days is 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Those are the 2 red, and these are the 4 schools stacked on top of each other. Those are the red vertical lines you see running all the way through. And the higher hourly electricity consumption relates to the darker colors, from green being very low to red being higher. And you can see pretty much the schedules are being tracked nice and closely. So this is electricity used to verify the fact that operating hours on the school day are what they should be. But within here, you can see the school break as well. That's the orange colored rows that you see on the left-hand side. There's a PA day there, as it says, the winter break. You can see weekends. This is the best way, the only way that we know of practically across a large school board verifying the fact that systems are running as intended. Next slide, please. So having looked at these results, not just for one school, and I think we found in many cases a school board, if they had a number of recently built schools, would have one that was looking fairly good and others not so much. And those became interesting conversations, like why the difference? In this case, all 4 were within a very close bracket right at the top of that benchmark chart. And the things that went right with Holton Catholic and Steve, if you're on the call and you want to kind of raise your hand or add a note into the Q&A, I'd love to get your direct insight on here, but otherwise I will speak, if I may, on your behalf from the conversations we had. But the organizational alignment, what we call strategic energy management, we'll come to that at the end. It's the organizational, it's how the school board manages its portfolio. But it's the most aligned school board that we found in terms of everybody being on the same page, having the management systems and practices in place. So we call that full organizational alignment. We see nothing better. Real-time utility monitoring is a natural. The Sub-metering is part of their standard, and BAS control matters. They run the HVAC schedules centrally through the building automation system, and caretakers and local staff have no authority to override. You'll hear more as this unfolds about the commitment to continuous improvement. They've got an external commissioning agent who works on every one of their schools that knows exactly how this is supposed to work and runs through the mentioned earlier, the engagement of the operations team in the whole process from the outside. So, as we say, they're designing the school to be operated efficiently, and that is not as straightforward as it may sound. And they have a very practical construction management process where they run a lot of the hiring of sub-trades internally. That leads to lower costs, and those cost savings go to ensuring they have good quality equipment. But again, we're assured that the cost of these schools is no significant difference from the Ontario funding formula, which all school boards receive. Next slide, please.
Ian, just wanted to mention, so Steve Alum is not on the call today,
Okay.
but I do want to add in a question here from Amanda at BC Ministry of Infrastructure, which I think would be a good one to expand on. Her question was, lots of school districts don't have staff who are dedicated to managing, monitoring, maintaining these sophisticated metering systems, and directing more of the budget, more of the operating budget towards this isn't something that boards are typically keen on. How have you seen this addressed in terms of ensuring the ongoing costs of these systems is manageable without putting a burden on existing operating budgets?
Yeah, we see a transition in terms of people running schools, from maintenance people to Steve has his own building automation system person. It's also something he's strong with. They don't have any more people running their schools. It's more embedded in the way that their operations and maintenance staff function, but they're very literate in the building automation systems, and they're very selective about which building automation suppliers they use. So everybody's very comfortable and familiar. But we do see a significant difference in the makeup of the staff running schools in the most efficient boards. It's quite different from others. And having building automation expertise within your in-house, within your operating staff, is a big deal. Let's go to the next slide. So as we collected the data, we built this hopefully useful kind of 10-step process, and it's not really a step-by-step because a number of these things run through various stages of the development cycle of a new school. But the 10 steps running through here, we're going to refer to this chart. So we're arguing that these are the elements of the process to be attended to. We try every conversation we had, we were trying to look at where are the strengths and where were the failure points in this process that led to either high performance or some of the underperforming schools that we were witnessing. So if this is a valid representation of the process, where does it go right? Where does it go wrong? And the rest of this conversation is entirely built around the elements of the process that we think have the biggest impact, and we have very specific recommendations for each of those for your consideration. So next slide, please. So let's start with the government. So the government, the policies they set, the regulations they require, their funding formula, the expectations they place on the schools and the utility companies and the incentive programs they put in place to make this work. We've tried to highlight some of what we think are the big things for consideration, but the starting point is if indeed it's accepted that the high performance energy target we'll present in just a moment is achievable, creating the expectation or making the requirement that that target be met. So there's a regulatory role in here saying we need to achieve these numbers, subject to adjustments we'll talk about. but we need to be meeting these kinds of numbers, which requires not just design and modeling, but commissioning operations. We need to get everything right so that we can consistently deliver high performance. We'll refer to the only utility company incentive program we found in Canada so far. There may be others, but I'd love to hear about them. The only one we found so far that we think gets it right in terms of supporting and incentivizing the right things within that development process. And given what was mentioned earlier, all school boards are under budgetary constraints. So the role of the utility companies in helping this transition to doing things better and doing them consistently better, we believe utility company involvement there is fundamental, and we would recommend this across all provinces. And the third one we've highlighted here is interval metering. Electricity, thermal energy should be interval metered so you can track it, and the sub-metering standard we'll look at just a moment should be there. So our recommendation to government is do these things, focus on these things to help your school boards achieve the results that we're talking about today. Next slide, please.
Just want to mention as a reminder, if you're asking questions, please use the Q&A function. You should see that at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And if you don't see that, click on more, the three dots, and you should see it come up.
Thanks, Katia. Yeah, and not the chat. If you put it in the chat, it just gets lost in translation. So we want you to be part of the record. Please use the Q&A for that. So looking across the country, these are the kind of incentive programs that we found along the way. There are some provinces that support modeling, some support energy studies. The Fortis BC, which you'll see highlighted there, we haven't dug deep into the amounts and how exactly the results are demonstrated, but the idea of a modeling incentive to enable more work to be done at the energy model stage, and then a performance incentive paid post-construction based on the achievement of the energy target and graduated based on that achievement. We believe that that is the ultimate way of doing that. So these incentive programs we think are a necessary bridge from current practice, which we've seen, to future practice, which we're proposing. The utility companies have an important role to play, and we will be reaching out to them to share these findings. Next slide, please.
Just want to mention here a comment from BC that a Clean BC may have been put on back burner by the BC government at this point, and we will certainly look into updating this table.
Yeah, and the reality that I know we've got a number of government people on this call, the reality that political will ebbs and flows with all of this. As I say to all the audience that I speak to over the course of the year, the climate really doesn't care. It's not that interested in whether we stick around or not. It's going to keep doing what it's doing, and ultimately we need to, at the local level, we can't expect governments to be consistently on side with this, but every school board, every government department, we have a role to play, and this is cost effective. We're not talking about spending any more money here. We're talking about much better outcomes with much lower emissions. But thank you for that. Yeah, we're watching what's happening and a little bit discouraged in a number of provinces today. Next slide, please. So number one is government get it right with the areas, the levers you have to pull. Number two is the high performance energy target, and we're going to propose here a specific number, which we have with other building sectors as well. We have a similar number for hospitals, which we're saying, again, subject to adjustments, local adjustments, local kind of unalterable adjustments, should be achieved by every new school going forward. And again, keep in this mind, these are fossil fuel fired schools. These targets will be lower if you're using heat pump technology or adding rooftop solar. So this we're saying should be the least that you should expect. This should be we should all be able to achieve these numbers. So next slide, please. And if we had a virtual drum roll, it would kind of sound right now. The number we're proposing for the 23-24 school year in Ontario is 7.5 in total, made up of 3.5 of electricity and 4 of natural gas. It's an empirically derived target based on um, a number of schools that are already running at this level, and we're arguing it's achievable by all. We've checked quite deeply into those schools. There's nothing bad that's happening there. There's nothing that is operationally or code-wise unsound. These are good, well-operating schools. These numbers are achievable because they've been demonstrated and proven. The breakdown you can see, and we're arguing these should be on the desk of every new school that's under design, under development right now, and the team should be held accountable and should be excited about achieving these or doing better than these numbers. We're arguing these are the numbers that are attainable today, and we should do at least this well going forward. Next slide, please. And forgive the acronym, but I got so tired writing out high performance energy target. So the HPET is here to stay. This is the archetype. These are the kinds of equipment. They do have exhaust air heat recovery. That's their standard. The school that had the highest gas use, one of the enthalpy wheels had failed, and because it's incorporated in the air handling unit, it can't be repaired. So they have to wait to kind of end of life. But it's LED lighting, gas-fired condensing boilers, exactly what, again, the large majority of schools we found, new schools we found are running at. Next slide, please. The adjustment, of course, for weather, and not just for weather by climate zone, but by city, and also from year to year. So this target would be adjusted for the specific reference year weather that we're talking about. But the 7.5 we looked at, you can see here would be 6.5 in Vancouver, would be 11.3 in Whitehorse. So the weather normalization by climate zone, we think makes perfect sense, and this is eminently doable. The big adjustments, obviously, in our climate are on heating, and we use a balanced temperature of 15 degrees Celsius, and that is supported by the next slide. Running regressions on Steve's schools. This is kind of a pretty picture that you'll see. Everybody, I think, understands this. The monthly gas consumption against the heating degree days per day. You'll see in the top right-hand corner is the slider that optimizes the heating balance temperature, 15 degrees. I expected the number to be lower, but 15 degrees Celsius is what these schools, all 4 of them, are running to. So that's the adjustment we make in terms of adjusting the target for climate zones. Next slide, please. And the other adjustments which can and should be made and are made during the course of the modeling, obviously the performance year weather, the other loads in there, if there are different heating sources, geothermal or air source heat pumps, those can be factored in through your model to still, if it was a gas-fired school, you're still meeting the 7.5. If there's any electric heat, if the air conditioning doesn't cover the whole school, Steve's schools are 100% air conditioned. And if you have fixed school day operating schedules, 12 hours a day, we have a number of boards in Ontario working towards 10 hours per day, and Steve is considering that. But these are the kind of adjustments you make through the modeling period to get the 7.5 equivalent for your specific site school. Next slide, please. So, first, the government has a role to play. Second, the target is everything, and making sure that the world understands that target. The whole team is held accountable to it, feels excited about beating it. The third piece, the question that was asked earlier, is around energy metering, and our 3 specific recommendations there are interval metering, which gets created at the modeling stage, carries through commissioning, and then carries through verifying ongoing operations. The appropriate level of submetering, we don't like extensive submetering because you get drowned in data, but there's key things that need to be measured, and that given you're a school board and your schools are often spread over a large geographic area, having readily accessible remote access. Next slide, please. So looking in this case, these are the kind of analytics that you do with central electric interval metering and with gas fuel interval metering. This is taking one of those schools, St. Veronica, and looking at them at the 4 seasons of the year. And I'm not going to dwell on what this is all telling us, but by looking at different periods for the same school measured in kilowatts, you get such a good sense of where the operating efficiencies and inefficiencies are and the opportunities. Looking at that base load in terms of electricity consumption, what makes that up? Why is that electricity use still happening in the middle of the night and on weekends? So interval metering is an amazing diagnostic tool and a very practical one. Next slide, please. This was one of the pleasant findings we had through there. You recall back when we looked at the electricity breakdown between the 4 schools, St. Gregory was significantly high and St. Veronica was significantly low. So this is intriguing. This is overlays in watts per square foot over the course of, in this case, it's the middle of winter, so there's no cooling or other effects in there. And the only difference that we could find from these 2 schools was the advanced lighting controls, like time of day, daylight, motion sensors, and the difference between these two is quite remarkable. So we're now big fans for lighting controls, not just in terms of reducing consumption, which is what you would expect during unoccupied periods, but reducing peak demand over the course of the day. It's quite remarkable, these findings. We found very similar things within some of the most energy efficient hospitals that we've looked at. So submetering, big deal. Next slide, please. And again, this slide deck will be posted on the Climate Challenge Network website under this particular project. So you don't have to write all of this down, but this is what Halton Catholic School Board has in terms of its standard, and this to us looks just about right. It's not too much, it's not too little. It's the Goldilocks perfection for this, but submetering matters, and this becomes part of getting to really high performance. Next slide, please.
I think, Ian, this answers Benjamin's earlier question, and he was also asking how is that information being used. But Benjamin, if you have additional questions, please feel free to submit some more through the Q&A.
Yeah, if that's the Benjamin, I think it is. Like you can
Yes.
imagine, we had a blast with this in terms of just so much good data and subtracting it, adding it, combining it, thinking about where it's all going. So this is a diagnostic tool, particularly during commissioning. You're probably not going to find too much time to use it further down unless you're troubleshooting, but during commissioning, it's pure gold. We have specific recommendations on, sorry, next slide, please. Yeah. On energy modeling, this is one area where we're recommending that schools put more time into, spend more money, which will reap big returns on a go-forward basis. So everybody needs to do some level of compliance modeling to get your building permit. That we understand, and we'll look at the differences between compliance modeling and performance modeling in a moment. But they're essentially the same model, but the performance model recalibrates the compliance model with real operating conditions, real design conditions, real operating schedules, real parameters coming from the board and the design team. So the performance model we're recommending is an additional requirement that sets the stage for high performance that comes further. That model will generate then demand profiles. EUIs will develop, if you like, the family of metrics and charts that go with the high performance energy target for that school, which becomes a permanent record that can be used on a go forward basis. So adding the idea of performance modeling is we are recommending as being fundamentally important to achieving the results that we're seeing. Next slide, please. And again, we're not going to run through this, but this obviously is in the slide deck and is for reference, and will be in the guide, which will be the master report that comes out of all of this work. But you see here during different parts of the process what design compliance modeling looks like, how performance modeling is different, and then once the school is operational, how you validate the performance model and make any necessary calibration adjustments because we've changed board policy in terms of operating hours, or we couldn't find equipment that would quite meet that standard. So you can make minor adjustments, but it then becomes, if you like, the medical charts of the school on a go-forward basis. These are the parameters that you expect to meet on a go-forward basis forever. Performance modeling, again, one of the key recommendations coming out of this work. Next slide, please. So using the performance model to verify the high performance energy target, there were a number of questions that came out of this. It wasn't completely intuitive to the people on the advisory committee meeting, so Mark put together this kind of step-by-step through there. So the primary role of the performance energy model is to validate in depth, in detail, not just the EUI, not just the total consumptions, but the load profiles, the operation during weekdays, weekends, school holidays, PA days, all of the things that apply there. So it looks to validate at a very fine level the energy model that was originally set. Next slide, please. And these are the kind of outputs. Again, I'm not going to try to read these, but these are the kind of metrics that feed into the commissioning stage, so that, again, the actual performance of the school can be validated by the commissioning agent in some considerable detail. And we'll show you later, our expectation is that that commissioning report, without sometimes just being shelved, saying, yeah, it looks like everything's working, will be signed off by the engineer saying they've gone carefully through this and said, yeah, we've delivered exactly what we planned and intended from the outset. Next slide, please. So curiously, in all of this conversation, we believe that the building system design is kind of the least important. You've got all kinds of variations on a theme for system design. The engineering community out there knows very well how to design these things, and they should all lead to very similar outputs in terms of what that total energy use should be, what that total energy target should be. But there are a few things that we did come across on the way through here. We appreciate we mentioned lighting controls as the second line down here as one that we would recommend everybody look at more closely than we found some project teams were. And the work that Nova Scotia is doing on whole building envelope specification and testing, we found to be really interesting and really important. And again, an area where we would recommend a bit more investment be made up front for long-term benefits. So these were key design issues. Can we, next slide, please? So this is self-evident that the infiltration testing that Nova Scotia did, that I'm sure many of you will be familiar with, it's the old principle, right? If you get the envelope right, then everything else kind of takes care of itself. The envelope is ultimately the interface between the outdoors and the indoor environment. If you get that right, it's going to minimize the heating load, the cooling load, the peak demands, and all of the other aspects of energy performance. So you see some of the the evidence that came out, the infiltration, the measured infiltration is a significant part of the overall high performance energy target. The good numbers there at 17.5 per square meter, or 1.6 or whatever it is. These are significant contributors to the differences between different schools, and these are the hardest ones to correct after the fact. So getting the envelope right the first time is a big deal. And Mark's included here the recommendations coming from the work in Nova Scotia on what to build into the design requirements to make sure you get the outcomes you're looking for. Next slide, please.
Ian, I thought I'd read this question, an interesting one from Amanda Austin at BC Ministry of Infrastructure.
Good.
Don't know if we'll be able to answer it, but wanted to read it out. Is there any data on annual cost per school over time for maintenance of faulty equipment in the system? Sensor replacement, software troubleshooting, bug fixes, etc.
Not that we are aware of. That would be magical information. I can't even imagine how we would start to try to collect that. If BC you'd like to take that on, we would love to receive the output from that. But I think, looking at the maintenance budgets of schools, we'll talk in a moment about, designing for to facilitate ongoing operations. These things are a big deal. And we also know in the schools, a number of the schools that are underperforming have some fairly horrifying ongoing maintenance things that they're having to deal with, and probably on a forever basis. So the maintenance piece we haven't tried to look at that at this point in time. I know we should, but that's not part of the scope of what we were trying to do at this point. Next slide, please. So once again, just to remind everybody, this is the same slide as you saw just a moment ago, but lighting controls really matter, and we would strongly recommend the difference between St. Gregory, which had fairly basic time of day lighting controls, and in this case, St. Veronica, that had programmable controls that were tracking motion sensors, were tracking daylight. I say this is one of the pleasant surprises for us coming out of this whole work. The results are dramatic, and they're absolutely worth supporting. Next slide, please. So getting to item 6. So we got 6 out of 8 that we will be looking at that cut across the whole process that we looked at at the beginning, and we have a lot of comments around testing and balancing and commissioning. I mentioned Holton Catholic has a dedicated commissioning agent. They figured out the procurement issues and the same, with an understanding about what are reasonable fees. The same engineer does all of their schools. So you've got that level of consistency. They're involved right from the outset. They're there at the beginning, talking about the target, talking about the issues, advising the design team. All of that works its way through. Commissioning agent is your best friend. The clarity about roles, responsibilities, in particular, in the different aspects of commissioning. So we talked about functional testing, and we talked about performance testing in the same way as we talked about modeling just a moment ago. Testing and balancing, the tab reports that, again, we find too often get shelved. If they get submitted, they get shelved. They are your best friend. It's like an X-ray. It's showing you what's working, what's not working, where things get fixed. We'll look at that in just a moment. Because we've got interval metering, the diagnostics we can pull out of that during commissioning means you can validate the required performance, not just overall, but at every time of day, at every day type over the course of the year. And just coming back again to the air tightness testing that we're recommending as being a key part. And again, we thank our friends in Nova Scotia for bringing that to our attention. Next slide, please. So here we're going to call this performance-based testing and balancing. And it's sort of self-evident, but the graphic on the top right-hand corner there, your engineering team must look at this when these results come back and see what's working and not what's not. It's an overstatement, but it would be the vast majority of tab reports that we see are highlighting really significant deficiencies within the installation that can be and must be corrected, or you can't get to the numbers we're looking at. So I'm just going to look at my bigger screen here. These reports show airflows. They show location of airflows. Very often they will come with a photograph with a picture of the air handling unit that kind of is there, so you get a better physical feel for what's where. But the static pressures for us are the critical aspect of these reports that come through. The static pressure drive the fan kilowatts, and the biggest opportunities we find are found within fan systems with excessive fan power for the same amount of airflow. There's no value being produced. What Mark has done here is colored in green circles. Do you see that? The things that are reasonable. So the the exhaust the exhaust relief air going to atmosphere at plus 0.04, that's reasonable. The outside air intake is reasonable. And at the other end of the system, the total external static pressure, the supply in the green, like 0.32, is a pretty good supply static that can feed the variable volume boxes or whatever's downstream. And the minus 0.16 is okay. So those green ones are good. And again, I can see Katya frowning at me already. Left unattended, I would spend the next 20 minutes talking about this. The pink highlighted numbers are excessive static pressures on the pressures between the return air fan at the top and the supply air fan intake at the bottom. That plus to minus number, that's outrageous and indicates quite likely that recirculation damper is not functioning. The intake is the intake in the bottom left-hand corner there. That intake compared to upstream suggests that there's restrictions on the air intake. On the right-hand side, the input static to that silencer is beyond what it should be. These things are all correctable, and they have to be corrected. And with great respect to everybody, they never are caught, and they never are, which is why the building often ends up with insufficient airflow or imbalances within the airflow, and undoubtedly excessive fan power. So testing and balancing is a big deal. You need a more rigorous specification, and you need the engineering team to pay very close attention to the results and to fix the things that are not correct. Next slide, please. So like with modeling, this is very similar. At the commissioning stage, this is the counterpart of the modeling. There's functional commissioning to say that when you push the button, something opens, and if you push it the other way, something closes. Performance commissioning is related but quite different and much more rigorous. And the intent of performance commissioning is to test all those variables, those metrics that came out of the model, and make sure that they're being met within a reasonable margin of difference, which we haven't fully specified yet, but that they're being met in the operational practice. And the commissioning agent doesn't leave, and the contractor doesn't leave until they've proven that those numbers are there. If all those numbers are there, the energy numbers take care of themselves. It's commissioning where you prove it. It's not kind of after the fact. So next slide. These are, I think you'll find this table intriguing. And again, thanks to Nova Scotia for this. This is the kind of report that you should be getting out of envelope testing, and this is comparing three of their schools with each other. And you can see even though these are all new schools, how variable those numbers are, and within envelope design, how, again, attention to detail is such a big deal. The detailing is everything with building envelopes, around thermal bridging, around gaps, around infiltration rates, around wall to roof joints, all of those things. Again, if you get that right, then dealing with the mechanical systems that are supporting that becomes a whole lot more straightforward. Next slide, please. Once again, we showed you the electric heat maps a moment ago, and heat maps, we suggest to everybody, should be your new best friend. direct outputs from modeling and not achievable without interval metering. Again, I'm not going to apologize for the repetition. There's a few things that we're hoping everybody will take away from this. In this case, it's the gas heat map. Once again, it's the same vertical lines of the 6 to 6 that might be reduced in future at Holton Catholic. You can see once again the the winter break, the PA days, the weekends, and we're still working on this. And this is one of the areas where we're quite kind of excited about what AI will bring. We the gas heat maps alone are interesting, seeing what's happening in the middle of the night at different day types. The electric heat maps are interesting. We believe when we put the two together, they can come up with very specific direction on where inefficiencies are in any school. From that, if we know what's wrong and what time of day and what day type it's wrong, it's readily correctable. And this is where we see the transition from looking at individual schools to being able to look at thousands of schools at the same time. So this is what Mark and his team are preoccupied with right now is how can we use data to really drive large scale improvements across schools in general. But heat maps, big deal. Next slide, please. And again, I will resist the temptation to go through this in any detail, but this for Holton Catholic, this is their 4 schools. And this is breaking up their electricity and gas use at different times of day. So that first chart on the left is the school day, which in this case, is preschool, is before the school day from 5 to 9 in the morning. The next chart is the school day itself from 9 to 5. Then it's after school. And then it's the unoccupied periods when there's nobody in the classrooms. Benchmarking those against each other at that granular level tells you exactly where the school is doing well and where it's not doing well. Once again, you can't do this without interval metering. Once you have interval metering, it's really easy to do, and it can be done province-wide, it can be done nationally, it can be done board-wide. So next slide, please. These are just 4 other day types. I won't go through them, but looking at the summer break, looking at when the school is closed during school holidays. So the ability to carve up that total EUI into when it happens and then compare that between similar schools is the best diagnostic tool we've ever created. And that is what drove the work here. Next slide, please. So 2 more pieces of the recommendations of the elements of bringing a new school to life. In here, facility operations probably is Holton Catholic's biggest strength. It's got within there having very functional building automation systems. They have only a couple of BAS providers who know exactly what the board expects of them, and they deliver it consistently. Within facility operations, making sure outdoor air volumes, schedules are run properly. And when we talked about at the beginning, this defining standards, authorities, limits, and reporting for who can reset things, who can make adjustments. And Holton Catholic keeps that fairly tight, and the results speak for themselves. We're working with a number of boards where caretakers have a good deal of latitude for making modifications, and we've never seen that go well. There's too many pressures on the site staff, from grumpy principals to teachers to whatever, to equipment failures, to say the easiest thing is to switch things to manual. You can't get there from here. So facility operations is critical to success, and maybe the biggest single differentiator between what Holton Catholic is doing and what we see any other board doing, and which is why board-wide, as the whole board, they're the highest ranked energy efficient school board in Ontario year after year. Next slide, please. And looking at these, there are operational KPIs. They're self-evident, but these are built into how they monitor their schools, how they expect pieces to, individuals and departments to function. On the S side, on hydronic systems, heat recovery, heating and cooling systems. These metrics are there. They're established during commissioning and they're carried forward through the ongoing life and revisited. So the continuous commissioning that Steve refers to, this is a regular reference back to when the school was running efficiently. And this is where we're at. Are we still there? Are the numbers still there? And have any new technologies or new ideas come along that can allow us to further improve on these numbers? So continuous commissioning, continuous improvement. Next slide, please. So the final of the 8 steps that we talked about, if you remember back at the beginning, we're going to refer to just checking the clock. Yeah, we're remarkably, we're right on time. Strategic energy management. So very simply, you can Google it. The ISO has a specific program in Ontario supporting strategic energy management. In our experience, the most efficient school boards and the most efficient hospitals and the most efficient commercial office buildings are not the ones with the newest equipment or the fancy control systems. They're the best internally organized. So we're saying organizational effectiveness is arguably the biggest single determinant of how efficient not just individual buildings are, but how efficient the whole portfolio is. Again, for me, this is a strength of the Halton Catholic school boards. So clarity of roles and responsibilities. What are people actually responsible for and how are they held accountable for that kind of thing? With the Halton Catholic Board and some of the interesting conversations we've had with Steve is around the idea of succession and continuity. We see school boards that are doing very well, and then suddenly they go badly. They drop way down our rankings, and when we check, almost invariably, the key person in that school board left. They retired, they're gone for whatever reason. This idea of, and we challenged Steve on this for Halton Catholic School Board, if Steve wasn't there, would that performance continue? And he assures us it would, that it's embedded in everybody's role, everybody's responsibility. He sees himself as the conductor, not the essential element of making this work, but succession, continuity planning, going beyond a champion to making this systemic is critically important. Good management of energy information, continuous monitoring, reporting on savings, being able to deal with variances. If the energy unexpectedly goes up, how does the maintenance department respond to that? What does the work order look like? How do they close the loop on these things? Staff training, especially if you're getting into new technology. We've seen too many schools where new technology is implemented. Nobody thought of the poor operators, never seen something like this before going through. So the idea of strategic energy management is critical, and we would argue for all boards, pay as much attention to your organizational functioning, structure, accountabilities as you do to the physical design of the schools and the operational design. Because you get those things right, then everything tends to, again, we've said this a few times, it falls into place. Next slide, please. After the advisory group meeting, Mark put this together, and you can read these 7 steps, but the idea of designers being very sensitized to the needs of the operational staff as opposed to kind of in a bit of a silo. I'll design it, somebody will build it, and then we'll throw it over the fence and expect people to run it. This integration is fundamentally important. So the concept with your team of right at the beginning saying, we're going to design this to make it as easy as we can to operate efficiently now and forever. This we think is a really key element. Next slide. And once again, interval metering stays with you forever. So you can be running these, you can put alarms on these. This is looking at the weekly demand for the schools from 2024 and then again in 2025 down below. Once you've got the data, you can put it into dashboards, you can put it into SkySpark, you can put it wherever you like, and you can monitor and verify performance forever. So it's continuous monitoring, continuous improvement, continuous tracking. Next slide, please. And this is one where I couldn't help myself, the gas, because so many schools have got electric interval metering. It's the gas that really has the difference because it's so variable and so dependent upon operating practices. So here again, we got four schools from one year to the next. The the 2024 in the upper chart, 2025 down below. You can see the changes. They all have meaning. And you can use these to figure out when you see on the monthly billing that gas went up or gas went down, you can see what went wrong. In the coldest weather, these charts are fascinating. The next slide, please. During the shoulder season, they're even more fascinating. You see which schools are they able to shut the heating off earlier or later? What does that mean? What does that tell you in terms of your operating and control strategies? Next slide, please. So we talked about dashboards. They can come out of utility data. They can come out in metering data. They can come out of the building automation system. So having trend logs that track the big systems in the school that you can then relate to what's happening to the energy profiles. But we're big believers in intuitive, easily accessible, easily understandable dashboards that give the people running the school all the information they need to be able to do a good job on a go-forward basis. Next slide, please. So I'm going to pass this back to Katia with Mark and Benaz's help to choose between the questions we've received that it would be good to answer now in the time we have left. And we will commit that all the Q&A will be in part of the proceedings of this meeting. We'll write it up along with the answers, and it will be attached to the recording of the meeting. But Katia, over to you to close this out.
Thanks, Ian. We've been picking up quite a lot of the questions as we went along. A few answered live, and Mark and I have answered a few. In the Q&A, we have one note right now. Iftikhar from Toronto District School Board mentioned that the numbers for KPIs are not shown. Ian, did you want to comment on that? Or Mark? I believe we were intending to show the metrics as opposed to the specific values.
Yes, that's a good question. So currently, what we provided are the EUI for the different end users, KPIs, limits for different equipments or systems are typically provided through standards. We haven't included this in our guide yet.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, there were quite a few answered questions already that I'm sure everybody has had a chance to look through. If there's any additional ones, please feel free to throw them into the Q&A. There is a question from Jim Sandercock in Alberta. Do you see many trending software or dashboards showing the maintenance costs as well as energy trends? Mark or Ian, would you like to pick this up?
I am not sure about the maintenance costs, to be honest. That's a good question, though. Like this is something I would need to investigate further.
And question from Davoud in Manitoba, I believe. Has Red Screen been playing any part in efficiency efforts, such as utility tracking, M&V, etc.? Mark, if you're responding, you're on mute.
Behnaz, I might need your help in here. I'm not so familiar with Red Screen.
Yeah, so Red Screen is a software used for energy modeling and uh, to answer this question, we should have help from the operating side of mm, the operation of the schools. I mean, this is not something that in this study we've used, but to use this software for utility tracking, that would be more beneficial to the operation people. And for MMV, we have used our internal tools.
Thanks, Behnaz. There is a question that has come through the chat. Just again, a reminder to please use the Q&A instead. But the question was, has anyone done a calibrated energy model and used it in the way that is being proposed?
I think that question was from you, Tom, and that's exactly what we're going to be discussing at the end of this month when I'm out there in Halifax to talk to your team. So Katia will remind us of next steps with this whole thing, and the answer is right now we're not aware of anybody that has, and we're looking forward to working with school boards and governments as they put this into practice. Technically, we know it's completely doable, but we haven't seen it done yet. No. You guys can be the first.
Tom, if you wouldn't mind just re-copying that question into the Q&A just so it can be part of the record, that would be awesome. And another question is, what is your current sequence of operation when prioritizing RTU heating capacity versus fan-powered box hydronic reheat? Did you evaluate alternative control strategies during design or commissioning?
That's a good question. However, like the purpose of the study and the archetype models that we've selected was kind of random. That corresponds to really a high efficient school. So we did not like verify alternative systems. Like the purpose of it was to be a bit system agnostic. Like we are not really recommending any system in here, but as Ian mentioned, these are sort of traditional systems, condensing boilers, uh, series fan-powered boxes, hydronic coils, nothing really out of the norm. The only add in, but I think this is now also the standard, are the enthalpy wheels. But we believe any equivalent system would be able to achieve the same results.
Thanks, Mark. We have another question, which is actually in response to an earlier question, which was answered about Halton Catholic School Board's external design team, that whether they use the same one year after year. The comment says, Ontario Ministry of Education encourages the use of repeat designs, which would allow a board to engage the same design team for multiple projects and improve on each project. So that's helpful. Another question so Tom, thank you. That's your question that was answered. And another question from Davoud, any reference to the range of EUIs for the schools that were under the study? I noticed a target reference of 7.5 equivalent kilowatt hours per square foot, but even the weather calibrated values may not be achievable for us. Should I flip back to the benchmark chart here?
I think that would be great. Yeah.
So all of this benchmark represent the 234 schools that was included in the data set analyzed. So as you can see, This goes from the high performance target energy levels that we're recommending, the 7.5 equivalent kilowatt hours per square foot, all the way to around 25. So all of these are relatively new school, built post 2015, and this is typically the range of EUIs we have in the data set.
Yeah, we have discovered no reason why every new school can't meet these standards using these types of systems and subject to the adjustments we talked about. So when someone says they may not be achievable, we need to understand maybe we missed something along the way. But if we know how to build schools at the green dotted line level of performance, we don't know why that can't be done every time.
Thank you, Ian. I don't see any additional questions in the Q&A at this point. Now I'll flip back to our spot in the slide deck. If there's any additional questions after we share the slide deck as well as the recording of this session, we are of course always happy to hear from everyone. We'll flip back for our last couple slides and wrap up if that sounds okay.
Sounds good.
So our next steps will be after this. We are planning to release the guide in April, as Ian mentioned. We also then plan to reach out to school boards and governments in each of the 5 provinces that we are including in the study. We're going to follow up with the questions that you see here on the achievability, the practicality, how and when this guide might be used. We, of course, very much want this to work and for this guide to have a real measurable impact on how new schools are turning out across Canada. And I'm sure there's still going to be a lot to learn to make this as doable and as practical as possible. In terms of our team, Mark is our technical lead. I'm the project manager for this initiative on the Codes Acceleration Fund project for all the building types. And Behnaz, she's been doing the data analytics for this. And Ian Jarvis is our executive director. So just to wrap up, thank you everyone for making the time for this today. We look forward to your additional feedback and questions, and we look forward to together getting this right and making a real difference in the school performance. Have a wonderful day, everyone.